Okay, well, good morning, everybody. I'm joined in the UKDEA podcast studio by Wim Jacobs from Zero Friction this morning, and we'll be talking about From Heat to Trust, the future of billing, really getting a practical with heat billing and customer experience in the UK. So, Wim, can I just ask you to introduce yourself, please, and tell me a bit about yourself and your company?
Yes, thank you, Simon. Good morning. So, my name is Wim Jacobs. I'm the CEO and one of the three founders of Zero Friction. With my background comes from software and to energy billing towards larger utilities for over 20 years now. And in 2018, we decided to start Zero Friction with a 100% focus on supporting the heating and cooling suppliers with administrative processes like billing and meter data management and contract management.
Great. That's really interesting. So I think the first topic we want to focus on, Wim, is sort of turning billing into a superpower. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts about how can accurate billing strengthen trust with end consumers. That's a really important point for us. We need to ensure that consumers can trust their billing system and have confidence in it.
Well, indeed, I totally agree, and sometimes even a bit underestimated, I would say. But accurate billing is just more than numbers. It's about trust. When customers really see that their heat bill reflects on their real use, they feel treated fairly, I would say, and they feel that they are really in control. And also, like when you have that, it builds up the trust, and it's going to be more likely to be supportive to the district heating companies. That's why we see that very important. We see transparency that builds the confidence, fairness. You need to give them a bit of empowerment through data. And of course, it needs to be compliant, and it needs to focus on these long-term relationships. So that's why we see a very crucial role into that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think accurate billing is an incredibly important point. Do you think there's a lot of inaccurate billing out there at the moment, Wim? Do you see a lot of problems in the market, a lot of problems with customers having a lack of faith in bills they're seeing?
Yeah, we see a few, I would say, but mainly a bit more in the past. I think, Simon, you know better than me, but it's not only in the UK, but we see that also happening in the rest of Europe. District heating, it's a kind of a monopoly, that's one. But that doesn't mean that these companies shouldn't be service-oriented. And unfortunately, what we have seen is that people don't always find their exact numbers matching on what, for example, how they can follow it into their homes or via digital tools versus what they have been invoiced. And you see also, for example, that high fixed costs is also not helping. Different kind of examples, and that didn't help the sector, I would say, before the sector, because they were more monopolists. They just say, okay, let's send the bills. But actually, there should be a switch from just sending bills to become a really service-oriented company, which should be much more central in these companies.
Yes, no, indeed. I completely agree. It's all about building trust with the customer through accurate billing. So if we think about reliable metering and billing, how that can support the energy transition and create a positive customer experience, have you got any thoughts on that particular subject?
Yes, definitely, because reliable metering and billing is more than just a back office process. They are really the bridge between the energy company and the customer trust. And I would say even more the heat transition or the energy transition and the customer trust. It goes hand in hand. If you give really these people more clear, accurate insights into their heat use, I would say we are not only, we definitely are champions in this or in this world, the heat suppliers. We're not only helping to decarbonize their energy system, but we also create a more fair and I would say more empowering experience for these customers. And that's really important. If there is a clear link between what they can see and follow and their consumption and their bill, there are more positive, I would say, behaviors on really a positive adaptation on these behaviors. Yeah.
Sure, good. So really what you're saying is through ensuring that customers can trust their bills, they understand their bills, they can follow them, and they can monitor them, they can accept how they can go on the energy transition journey through to low carbon. So I think that's a really important point.
Indeed. Yeah.
thinking about sort of lessons from the past, how things can help us improve today, sort of transforming challenges. I mean, we're all aware that in the past there have been issues with unclear or inaccurate invoices. I think it's about building stronger relationships with customers, residents and customers. I mean, do you have some good feedback from that in terms of when you've introduced your systems into schemes, how sort of customer perception of heat networks has changed?
Definitely, we see I would say we see definitely a positive evolution happening. But what we have seen in the past, every unclear invoice or disputed charge or it has taught us something also, and that's what I found positive about it. And people, what they're looking for is like fairness, clarity, and control. That's pretty simple, but we have been learning from these moments, and I see definitely that we transform the billing from. It sounds very negative, but a source of conflict, but into foundation for stronger, more trusting relationship with his customers. And a few lessons from the past is, and maybe repeat a bit myself, but an unclear bill creates confusing and mistrust. And then on top of that, if there's an unclear bill and it's difficult to get hold of the heat supplier, or you get a slow response on complaints, that definitely didn't help as well. And a third one I would say is, what are these fixed charges are about? Bringing transparency in fixed charges and that become a large part of the bill, and the consumption that can control fixed charges less. That led to frustration. So there are a few examples onto that, but luckily we see definitely a switch, and definitely regulation, etc. It will be helping on getting that switch done. Yeah.
Great. So, I mean, really interested to understand a bit more about how your experience has been in delivering your product and the sort of the penetration you've had. So how many customers do you have today using your system, Wim, for example?
Yeah, I'm glad to say that we are at our 100th heating supplier this week. So we have 100 heating suppliers using our platform across Belgium, Netherlands, France, UK. And what we have been seeing, and we see that still today, like for example, we started pretty active and pretty early back in 2019 already in the Netherlands. And there was no standard. There was a kind of, there was a regulator who is saying this is the maximum tariff, but there was no standard on how the bill should look like. How do you communicate with these customers? Like I said, there were just companies, monopolists, sending an invoice, and they were difficult to get in contact with. We have been managed to really turn that around, and we have been helping them setting a standard in the process from meter to cash, but also a standard in the invoice templates, which brings the clarity, and that also helping them also have a digital tool so that they can compare, their end consumers can immediately compare between the bill and what's on the meter. So these elements, we have been supporting them, and we have seen a huge switch in customer satisfaction and really adapting more positive adaptation of district heating in the Netherlands and in Belgium by just defining these standards. If you look at France at the moment, we have to say that a lot of these public companies are using Excel today, and they don't have a digital format also with their customers. Yeah, Excel, it's a fantastic tool, but it's of course you can make a lot of manual errors. It doesn't give you that proper overview, and it takes time every month. So we help there again defining a standard process, and also bring again the visibility towards the end consumer on their consumption and their bills, and that builds up the trust. And we see that, of course, we are not 100% yet there, I would say. Definitely not. There's still a future ahead. But that's the transition that we make together from just sending a bill, difficult to contact, towards a more service-oriented company and reliable bills, and also something that they can control. And that's going to be very important towards the future, to give more control to the end consumer.
Okay. So sort of drawing this particular section of the podcast to a close, I think what you're saying is, from use of your system, you see the step change in the customer experience in terms of their relationship between the heat supplier and the customer through introducing a much more accurate, timely billing system from use of your product. I think, is that correct, Wim?
Yes, I would say that's a perfect summary, but you better summarize it than me.
No, it's been very helpful in explaining what the benefits have been, so that's very good. No, absolutely. I one thing I'm quite interested to talk about is the differences between the UK and Europe and what we can teach each other. I mean, currently, as you're well aware, there's a big push in terms of customer protection regulation in the UK. Ofgem is working very hard, issuing lots of consultations at the moment in terms of the rules and regulations that come in force over the next year. What's your thoughts on the sort of the UK's customer protection push, its impact on supplier processes, and what, if anything, EU suppliers can learn from UK's regulatory sort of momentum that we've got going at the moment?
Yeah, it's fantastic because the UK's customer protection push is reshaping the heat networks. I would say for residents, it will definitely has its effect because it means, like one again, clear bills, fair pricing, stronger rights, easier to contact. But for suppliers, it also means that they have to sometimes rethink a bit the process from billing systems to this customer service, like I mentioned. So they're just not technically reliable, but also trusted and customer friendly. For me, it's a shift from being infrastructure operators to becoming true energy service providers. And I think that fits also into what the Ofgem regulation is trying to achieve, to match it together with the electricity gas market, which is all known before, and that we are going to see them as really energy service providers. And from day one, we believe that this switch is definitely crucial for these companies. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's interesting. I think that the flagging up the point that we're sort of moving from infrastructure operators to sort of energy suppliers, and it's a service that we're delivering to end consumers, and consumers have got to have a trust in that service. I think that's a really important point. But I'm interested that from your perspective, you see that the UK is really sort of leading the way strongly in terms of the regulation of heat supply. Other way round, I mean, we don't really look outside the UK very much too often. I mean, how is that working outside the UK? Is there anything you think the UK heat suppliers can learn from other countries like Belgium, Netherlands or France?
That you can learn from in the UK or from the other countries or vice versa? No.
Either way, but I'm also interested if there's any good practices happening in Belgium, Netherlands and France that you think would be useful to bring to the UK at all. Is there any learnings, or do you think we've largely got everything going in the right direction?
I think this regulation step and setting these standards are so important. So that's definitely that we can see in certain countries that could be picked up. Even like in Belgium, we are from Belgium. In Belgium, there's definitely still some steps to take. But if you look the other way around, I think three things stand out a bit that I can give away from other countries. What we learned is, I think one is the value of the partnership model. In Belgium, we see that there is definitely these collaborations between these companies are very important. The partnership models, like involving municipalities, energy companies and industry and kind of joint ventures, this multi-stakeholder approach, that is probably something that could help spreading risks and strengthen the community buy-in. That's one what we see in Belgium. What we see in the Netherlands, there's a huge transition happening in the Netherlands. There's this new heat act, or this new heat law, I would say, is coming, and they need to have 51% of the district heating schemes needs to be publicly owned. So that means that the municipalities are at this moment are in control, and we are in this transition phase. The downside is maybe that private partners are maybe investing a bit less, or how they are finding this collaboration. But what you see is that the public sector is definitely stepping up. We have also kind of, like you're familiar with heat zoning, they have done heat plans in the Netherlands. For every commune, every municipality had to create heat plans. They had to decide, in this area, there's a district heating network. In this area, it's going to be all electric. In this area, we leave it open. We don't know yet. It could be either way, but it's a very strong view and it's a very strong basis that we say that you can stimulate towards your end consumers, so that your end consumers are seeing, okay, I have to go for a heat pump, individual heat pump, because we know there's no district heating coming here. So similar, so that's definitely very positive, I would say. If you look at France, I think we can say that has become, next to the Nordics, of course, and Germany maybe, but it's becoming more and more the largest district heating network. And they have over 800 networks, and they have a strong growth. There is also a high push from the government with, I think, 800 million public money that is put in these growing companies. But what there you see is that municipalities playing a central role in planning, coordinating, and ensuring also citizen interest, of course. So there you see that maybe, the local councils, or how you say, local municipalities as strategic partners are very important. So this collaboration model is also definitely something that could be interesting. So I think, wrapping up, municipality leadership, customer protection laws definitely set the tone, like you see in Netherlands. Partnerships model, looking for collaborations like we see in Belgium. I think that's the key takeaways I can say.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting indeed. As you're most probably aware, Wim, in the UK government has decided that the private sector will firmly take the lead on delivering heat networks and heat network zones, and the local authority role will simply be zone coordinators, sort of setting the zones and then running the competitions. I'm fascinated by the fact that in the Netherlands they've mandated that at least 51% of the ownership in the network shall be with the municipality. Was that something that, do you know much about that? Was that heavily debated in the Netherlands? Why did they take that route? Why did they not follow the UK model with much more of a private sector lead?
Yeah, it's heavily debated for sure. It has been going on for many years now already. The reason why that they mentioned this, or that they have chosen for this model, is because the past years, the private sector, they said they haven't been investing enough in the market. The growth was about 15,000 new heat connections connected to a heat network per year. And that was going too slow for them, for the government. They know that they have to speed up in order to reach their goals, their carbon emission goals. And that's why which is central in this. And that's why they said that the government needs to take more control and needs to stimulate that I would say in a positive way, which means that actually besides the municipalities, who are a central role, you see also that the grid operators, which are public players in the Netherlands, are also stepping up. And these guys have experience, of course, with running infrastructure, not specifically on heat, but on other infrastructure. And these guys are definitely going to give a serious push, because they have this high ambition of connecting 1.5 million additional connections to the heat networks only by local grid operators. So they want to, it's just more on a push from the government, because it was going too slow, that they think that bringing it into public hands, that it will definitely speed up market growth.
A fascinating parallel to the UK, where the UK government has taken exactly the opposite view and is putting the development of the heat networks into private sector hands, believing that will stimulate and build networks more rapidly. So it'd be interesting to watch how the UK model and the Netherlands model operate, and which one is actually more successful in delivering connections.
In all honesty, my personal view, but that's more a personal view, I'm also a member of the District Heating Association here in Belgium, so we're discussing about that quite a lot also. But my personal view is, when you make a choice, it's also you lose a bit, and time will tell for sure. But for me, I think it needs to be an end-to-end situation, because you need to have this public owners definitely pick up their role, but you will need the private investors to support that. And definitely, the financials is a bit of a challenge, I think, in many countries. And therefore, we need actually both, in all honesty. And I think that would be for me, my personal opinion, is an end-to-end situation.
No, I tend to agree with him. I don't think personally that there's a right or wrong answer. I think there's a locality-specific answer. If the locality is particularly motivated and wants to create heat networks, they should be allowed to take the lead. But if they clearly have no interest in taking the lead, or they just don't have the capacity, then the private sector should. So I'm on your page, Wim, that we shouldn't be artificially constructing a solution on a national basis. Okay, that's really interesting. So let's wrap up. That's very interesting. Lots of different things happening in the continent compared to the UK. So I'd be interested to monitor how those two work, but also interesting to hear that regulation of the heat market in the UK is definitely leading the way in terms of what can be done in terms of regulating down individual customers, not as opposed to buildings.
Yes.
So if we move on to sort of the third section of our podcast, I was keen to focus on the rise of pay-as-you-go heat networks in the UK. Pay-as-you-go has not traditionally been seen as something that's been widely used. Credit billing has been widely used throughout the UK. So I'm interested in your thoughts as to whether pay-as-you-go is gaining traction in the UK market, and what you see as the pros and cons of pay-as-you-go systems.
Yeah, well, first of all, pay-as-you-go is, for now, we don't see it in other European countries, so we only see it in the UK, and we see it's definitely gaining traction. That's what we hear from talking to several parties, because it also covers a bit, like if you speak then on the pros and the cons, it's actually beneficial for, you can say something about both things, but it's on one hand, it's beneficial on both sides. For the customers or for the end consumers, it means control. It means transparency. You top up when you can. You don't have this, maybe, I would say, unexpected surprises with your end node. And of course, if you look then at the role of, and that's why I understand also why pay-as-you-go is definitely picking up. For the suppliers, it definitely reduces their debt risk. Yeah, you can say it turns it maybe something simple, familiar, and digital also. So that's what we see. If you look at the pros and the cons, there's a bit maybe that the pros I just mentioned. It's consumer control and budgeting and transparency and debt management, definitely on that side. But if you look at the cons, it's what is happening when they run out of credit, and you need to have this disconnection happening. Of course, it's also, I know that there are still manual ways of getting top-ups done, but we are more and more moving away from manual towards digital. And how accessible is these digital tools to everybody? That's also something to take into account. On the other hand, it also requires more serious investment. I would say a credit billing meter installation is much cheaper than you have with a pay-as-you-go installation, which makes the installation and the upfront cost also higher. And I don't know, in all honesty, if from a customer perception, if that's really positive, I would say, thing. And for the time being, and that's something that we definitely need, I would say it's rather closed also on a data point of view, and it should become more an open frameworks to make available.
Absolutely. I was very intrigued by the comment you made at the start of this section of the podcast by saying that pay-as-you-go is not, I think you said, used at all in Europe?
No.
Interesting. What have people ever tried to introduce it? Has there been no call for pay-as-you-go? Or how do people deal with the kind of issues that people in the UK are citing for the need for pay-as-you-go, to allow customers to budget and only pay for heat as they want? Is that not seen as an issue on the continent, would you say?
It definitely is seen on as an issue, because debt management definitely in certain domains, I would say, is definitely increasing debt is definitely something that's a challenge where these heat suppliers are dealing with. But we are first one step maybe back. We are familiar with we call it budget meters. Budget meters are for electricity and gas, where you can top up also and where you can then use. But that's really, really something that's getting installed, I would say, in very late phase or something. So it's not an option to do it up front.
And that's not seen in the heat network world in the continent?
No, not at all. That being said, I'm wondering, because I know that it's a bit of a debate in France at the moment, if that should not be applied, because in France, it's a kind of a B2B market. So district heating suppliers, what they do, they go to the entrance of the building and they just send an invoice to the building owner. And then the building owner is responsible to divide the cost to this individual end consumers. There is a huge push from the government that the heating supply should invoice towards the end consumer. And then this debt management is starting to pick up. And they want to learn, and I think there could be an opening to have more pay-as-you-go metering towards the future. But today it's not. I don't think it's even allowed today. So it doesn't. So I didn't see it at the moment in any of the other countries. Yeah.
I mean, certainly this is an interesting point when you talk about B2B. Certainly from my experience, elsewhere in Europe, outside of the UK, I've struggled to find many countries where the heat supplier actually bills the end consumer directly. Often they just do bill the building owner, and the building owner then bills the end consumer. Would you agree, or are you seeing there are certain countries where the heat supplier actually does bill the end consumer as a sort of standard as business normal practice?
We see a huge mix, I think. In France, it's definitely B2B. In Belgium, it's a bit of a mix. But we go to the end consumer. Like in Ghent, there's district heating network runs by EDF Luminous. And there they go to the end consumer. In the Netherlands, it's very common that they go to the end consumer. There, they build the end consumers. They don't go to the entrance of the building even. I think they go all the way. Stimulated also by the government. And I think in the Nordics, most of them are also going direct to the end consumers. And in Germany, we see a bit of a mixture. There is a lot still on building level, where the building manager then still has to deal with it towards his individual occupants.
Okay, cool. No, thanks very much. To sort of wrap up this section on pay-as-you-go, sort of crystal ball gazing, looking to the future of pay-as-you-go, do you think there's some changes that will come along in the future to modify how pay-as-you-go systems work? Have you got anything in the pipeline? Have you got any views or thoughts about the evolution of pay-as-you-go over time?
I think it will grow, definitely. And what I'm hearing from, supported by also, I think, the regulation, is that this open data communication will be key to success. Easy integrations will be crucial. And then I'm also speaking from our point of view. If you look from a billing platform, I have to be, if I can compare also, when we were doing this, we have so many integrations with so different metering systems, and that's all needed because the customer is choosing which kind of system they want to work with, metering system then. But we always have very easy to integrate. It's just very easy. We get on a daily, on a real time, on an hourly basis. There was a bit of I would say, not with everyone, but there was a bit of a push, I would say, from us that in the UK, that the standard for not being too open on that was surprising me a bit. And I think that is so crucial to make this a huge success, because data, these days, data communication and data availability is crucial to run your networks and to run your customer service in a proper way. And that should be made available in a very open standard.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think access to data, having common systems, open protocol is incredibly important. And I agree it's essential for the future of pay-as-you-go for that to be put in place. Okay, let's wrap up this podcast with the final section, a checklist for future-proof customer communication. So it's incredibly important for all heat suppliers that they really have a good communication running with their end user, their customer. So I'm thinking just some of your thoughts about how you stay compliant, you build trust, what do you believe is needed from heat suppliers in relation to customer communication. Yeah, I'm interested in your thoughts on those kind of issues, Wim.
A few things that we see if you look at for the future-proof checklist, and sometimes it's a bit of a repeat, but I would say transparent billing and usage information. That's clear, I think. We all said it by now. You need to able to see it. You need to compare it. You need to see how others are doing. How are you doing? So that's definitely. Secondly, I think also have a flexibility on the payment options so that you can switch. Pay as you go, credit billing, that's all multi-channels, like you see online, in person. And of course, take a really good consideration of vulnerable households, of vulnerable customers. That's definitely an important topic to take into consideration. I would say third one is a proactive communication. You can't communicate enough, I think. Okay, not overdone it, but clear communication, proactive communication, also being accessible for definitely questions, that's one. And of course, I think is the accessible customer support. What I was surprised about a bit before when we were starting this, how difficult it was to find contact details to reach out to heating supplier. And I'm speaking about the UK, I was speaking more in the countries that we were active. And they were just hiding for like their end consumers. I was really surprised about that. So that needs to be turned around. You need to be available. People are asking questions on this. People are wondering, what's my bill about? People are wondering about certain technical things, so you have to deal with that. So you have to really take that into account. And we definitely see that the number of questions are just higher than you can compare with electricity and gas market. It is like that. It's much bigger. Of course, other one, regulatory compliance. You need to align with this Ofgem, etc., and what comes into our direction. Yeah, include some trust building practices in a digital and support the digital way into that as well. Help educate a bit your consumers. Help them on giving them tips and tricks on how to save. Yeah, help them to educate, and you can do that by that's for me trust building practices. Yeah? Communication, guide them, train them.
No, interesting. I was interested by your comment about the much greater level of questions from heat network customers compared to electricity and gas customers. I think that's a really interesting point and testimony to the potentially the more complex nature of heat networks. I'm also interested in your thoughts on user portals. I mean, we're all being encouraged to use online portals, to look at frequently asked questions, to sort of self-service for end consumers. Do you think there's still a role for a sort of a customer services representative in the future, or are you seeing that customers really should just be interacting with sort of self-service portals? What's your thought about the blend between in-person versus customer portal relationship?
Good question. What I see is that the customer portal will definitely bring value, but let's be honest, we all know that if you have an app or a portal, it's nice to look at certain points in time, but after a while, you forget a bit. So what you need, what we strongly believe, and once again, we are not yet there, but that's our future vision, is that you will need to stimulate that by being communicative, proactive, and also inform them upfront, and that they are definitely and you point them then to the customer portal, of course, again, so that they can start seeing things, that they can be taught about things, but you need to make a bit of a gamification element, I would see, built in there. That's one. And secondly, I don't believe that AI or self-service portals or anything will replace the human aspect. It needs to be there to support you, but the human contact will remain very important. We are running also a contact center for some of our customers, and what I hear and what you see coming in and how the people are speaking to us, there is definitely a level of direct contact needed, and because you can't do that all via digitalization, it's not going to cover it. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think there will always be a blend between self-service portals and the real world, talking to a person, because it just makes a better customer experience if both can be offered. I was interested in sort of wrapping up. You mentioned AI there. What role do you think, I mean, AI seems to be almost taking over the world at the moment. What do you think the role will be for AI in relation to sort of billing, customer communication? Do you think there's much of a role for AI to play in that particular sector?
Yes, for sure. And it's already happening. Huh? If you look at, there are some great digital twin solutions, I think, already out there. But what it needs to help is two ways. I think for me, it's AI is on the technical side, and it's not my expertise, but there, the digital twin element, getting it much more automatic view about the prediction and steering on optimization, on production versus consumption. I think that's going to be essential, but that's one element. Not my expertise, but that's definitely what we see. On the other hand, where you can see on the billing and the communication, there more personalization will definitely be in place. Faster support, meaning that I don't say it's going to fully replace it, but like I said before, it's going to help the district heating company in replying much better and much faster and much more accurate to their customer in case there are questions. But also the whole process should become more automated, and it's going to be more managed by exception. So because of if you look at, it can really fast process large volumes of data, and it can detect anomalies much quicker, unusual consumptions, and then it should help them also to help them with more personalized customer communication. So it's using the data that is available, and there's so much data already available. If you can help that, make it more in a personalized customer communication, and then you're supporting your customer support also to make that much more faster and correcter. And I think then we make a serious step already. We will be making a huge step forward if we can cover these already.
Interesting. And from the perspective of your company, Wim, are you looking to utilize AI in your business at all?
Yeah, doing that already. We are now currently working at a full AI implementation plan across the whole organization also. At the moment, we are focusing very much on support for the engineering team, I would say, developing the product, speccing the product, documenting the product, translating all these kind of topics. There is a huge benefit already noticeable. The next step is also looking for the effect towards our customers, which are the heating and cooling suppliers, to make sure that there are more smarter, I would say, functionalities available, which lead to saving time, of course, saving time and saving costs, making it more scalable, and help them also more proper information towards their end consumers. So that's all in the plan, and currently we are taking huge steps already, but that will be for next year, next 2 years, it will be playing an important role for us. Yeah.
Interesting. Great. No, thanks very much indeed. Thanks very much. I think that wraps up this latest version of the podcast. It's been very, very interesting talking to yourself, Wim. My sort of key takeaways are the differences in terms of the business development models between the UK and Europe, the pace and leadership the UK is taking in regulation, and also the importance of accurate billing to build trust with customers. So, yeah, it's been really interesting, and thanks very much for talking to me, Wim.
Thank you, Simon, for taking the time, and it's great talking to you as well. And I'm looking forward to seeing this nice future development in the UK picking up.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Goodbye, everybody. We hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast today. If you'd like to find out further details from Wim about the technology he offers, please email him at wim.jacobs@zerofriction.co. Also, if you'd like to get involved in future podcasts and you like what you've heard today, then if a UKDEA member, please do contact us. Thanks very much indeed.